Right, ladies and gentlemen, my Transformers out there, raise a glass or a podcast app if you got it. Tonight, our guest, a man of many talents and even more whiskey, Mr. Whiskey. And the whiskey is not necessarily literal, but hold on, this ain't your average whiskey connoisseur. This is a comedian, author, ghostwriter, podcaster, content creator, and yes, even a life coach who uses his own fiery spirit to light the way for others. He's hailing from the north, but rocking a southern draw. Mr. Whiskey is a U.S. Navy veteran, an electrician, made nuclear by trade. You might say he was exposed to some truly unique characters during his service, and those characters became the inspirations for his legendary podcast, Couple of Nukes. Now, don't be fooled by the name Sure. Mr. Whiskey, he goes deep into life's complex issues. He's a champion for aspiring writers, a beacon of hope for those struggling with mental health, and a guiding hand for anyone seeking their own inner compass. And get this, he does it all solo, friends. From creating the show to hitting that record button, editing, scheduling, and even running the social media. This is a one man powerhouse. He's fueled by pure passion. Each episode, Mr. Whiskey invites someone new aboard his podcasting ship. They share their stories, their battles, their triumphs, and together they create a wave of connection that washes over listeners, leaving them entertained, empowered, and maybe even a little tipsy on inspiration. So buckle up, crewmates. Tonight we're joining Mr. Whiskey on a unique voyage across the seas of life. Are you ready to set sail? Let's give him a warm welcome. And with that, cue the applause. Unfortunately, I don't have sound effects, but get ready for an amazing interview. How's it going, Mr. Whiskey?
But it's going great. I gotta say, when I introduce myself on the show, I just say, as always, I'm your host, Mr. Whiskey. So to hear that little bio, I mean, it did give my ego a little stroke there. And I haven't started drinking yet. I'm actually drinking tea this morning. I had a fever last night, woke up,
Uh-huh.
scratchy throat, unable to talk. But luckily in Savannah, shout out to the tea room, over 100 different types of teas from all over the world, special parts. They go to mountains, they go to oceans, they go all over to gather special herbs, and whatever I drank instantly healed. So it may have been spiked. I'll leave that to the audience to decide. But yeah, Marcus, buddy, good to see you again. For those of you who don't know, he actually came on my show. The episode's not out yet, but it will be. And Marcus, I may
Yeah,
be
check it out
requesting
once it
your
come out.
yeah, for sure. I may be requesting your DJ skills soon here. I'm actually going to be dropping a rap video about the people left behind after a person commits suicide, and it's going to feature me as two different personalities, that survivor's guilt, that person inside of you who says you didn't do enough, why didn't you stop them? And the other person who says, look, man, you got to be real with yourself. If a person makes that decision, and goes through with it, there's only so much you can do. And I'm not saying don't do anything, but I'm saying afterward, don't let it burden you for the rest of your life. I've had a lot of conversations, and Marcus, we talked about this a little bit before. I've had people come to my room in the middle of the night, Mr. Whiskey, can we go out for a drive? No destination. I just need to go for a long drive and get some things off my chest. So I'm telling you, shipmates and sailors and everyone out there, you go for that drive. I, Look, I've done it before exams. I've pulled all-nighters. Nothing is more important than taking care of someone. I've been up to 3 a.m. listening to a man talk about every ex-girlfriend he ever had. But you know what? He needed to get it off his chest. And women, men, whoever, we got to be there for each other. So yeah, you kind of mentioned I talk about suicide a lot. And it's because the school I went through, we had about 1 to 3 a month on base, about 1 to 3 month guaranteed pretty much. And the ship I was on, we had 15 in about a year and a half, 3 in the same week. We even had a murder. The stress, the emotions got to the point a man actually killed his wife. It was off the ship, but I remember I was standing a radiation watch, securing a radiation area, and the ship got quiet. Everyone disappeared, and I stuck my head out the door and I said, "Where is everyone?" My buddy found me later, homewrecker, who's been on the show, and he was like, "Mr. Whiskey, were you at that all hands call?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "There was an emergency muster." I said, "Oh, well, I was on watch, I was on a vital watch, so no one got me, right?" Captain was crying. He called everyone in the hangar bay. He was shedding tears, and he goes, "There's been a murder, a shipmate against another shipmate." And I mean, our captain, I respect him so much. He's the guy, and he shared with us because we had so many suicides, and he's the guy who has to make the phone call home. He has to call and talk to the parents. Ma'am,
Right.
sir, we've lost your son's or daughter on my watch, on my ship, at my command. And I remember when he really broke down is this guy got drunk on our ship, and he went out for a joyride on his motorcycle. Went so fast, both him and the bike were cut clean in half when he crashed. Just cut right down the middle, like in a movie, a cartoon. And he had to make that phone call. He goes, as if the calls home for suicides aren't hard enough for me to make, to now say another phone call. And so his point there was to make smart decisions. And as much as we joke about drinking and everything, ladies and gentlemen, it's like with regulation, I get it. The service is rough. I mean, Marcus, you've been there, man. And it's like drinking is an outlet, but we talk all the time on my show about drinking, sex, drugs, smoking, excessive sleeping, all these bad de-stressors. And before we started recording, you were talking about some good de-stressors like acupuncture, meditation, yoga, writing. There's so many outlets, and service members, especially men, kind of get this pride going. Well, I've been bullied for I've published 9 books. I've got 1 to 3 more coming out this year, and I've been made fun of it for it. But that's my outlet, man. And you can call me gay for writing poetry and all you want, but I got better emotional control than some of the guys who be doing that. And sometimes we really have to put aside our pride and take care of our hobbies. So Marcus, is your music an outlet for you?
Yeah, man, my music has definitely been, my biggest outlet. And, for the first time in a while, I was able to like, you know, write some music last night, and I was able to, just rock some beats out, man. And like I was telling you, like when you interviewed me, I've been learning acoustic guitar,
Hell
like
yeah.
trying to pick that up. And like you said, we got to have healthier outlets. A lot of times when we don't explore those healthier outlets, that's when we turn to those dangerous ones. We turn to like the alcohol, we turn to the sex, we turn to things that's just going to like make us feel even more dirtier, and make us feel more shameful, and want to spiral down. uh, and Mr. Whiskey, like I just commend your resilience. I commend uh, how
Thank you.
strong you were to be able to like witness all of that. Um, and just looking back, like how were you able uh to really, like, you know before you discovered writing, like, or were you writing through some of those moments? Yeah, already? Were you writing through some of those moments already, or or were you even like even conscious to like what was going on around you when people were like dropping left and right, and
So,
these were your peers?
right, right. People I knew personally, and I feel like part of what you're trying to get to help everyone else out is, how do you handle this as a firsthand witness and all that? And the thing is, Marcus, I'm not special compared to anyone else. In fact, I've had interventions done on me for this chief stopped me and he said, Mr. Whiskey, you stretch yourself way too thin, taking care of everyone else. Even Superman couldn't save everyone. And I've said this before. I don't like Superman. I'm Team Batman. But the idea is that Superman is the strongest character ever, right? He could save everyone. But even he had people he couldn't save. And the thing, Marcus, is when you take care of everyone else, you do lose yourself. And you got to think, listening to all these sailors and civilians tell me everything wrong with their life, they're vomiting onto me, their negativity, right? And I became a sponge for that. And I myself have dealt with suicidal ideations and depression, and misery loves company. I used to hang out at the smoke pit, and I don't smoke, but all the sailors would go there, try to get out of work and smoke. And I would go there and I would listen to them, vent. They needed someone there for them. But then I'm stuck with all of it. And I'm like, well, who do I talk to? That's not something you want to take home to your family, and your friends are the ones venting to you. And so it, it's a lonely path on some ways. And that's why I really like having this platform I've created, Couple of Nukes, where I'm able to discuss it with a lot of people who have gone through the same things. And so writing definitely helped me, poetry, but there's also times where I just went out for a long drive. One of my most heartbreaking moments actually was one of my buddies. I never knew that he was suicidal or depressed. And after I got out of the military, he reached out to me. And I guess, he felt comfortable now. Part of it was there's supposed to be a mandatory reporter in the military. And, a lot of us have to make decisions between the military and what's best for our friends, because sometimes reporting a person isn't the best solution, because there's a difference between action and talk. And a lot of military members talk very negative, talk very about things they're going to do, and they're not going to follow through with it. And I'm not saying everyone's bluffing, right? Definitely don't take it that way, because you never know when someone's going to commit something. But he felt more comfortable once I was out of the military, and it broke my heart, because this was a guy, Marcus, I mean, never saw it coming. I mean, and he's alive, you know. He's been underway for a while now, and I haven't heard from him, and I always check out when I can, but he was doing his job. He was in a relationship that he was happy with. He was joking, laughing like the rest of us. And one of the things they brief us in the military, because it's become such an epidemic, is no one is safe from feeling bad. And that's the truth. We all have bad days. And in the service, it's especially hard. And Marcus, if you can confirm this with me, I felt like the military is very isolating on a lot of levels, because you really don't have that time for your family and friends. You get, and I saw it on Instagram, and this is one of my favorite quotes. They get used to living life without you, but you don't get used to living life without them. You're distracted. You're on the mission, right? And
Mm.
so you're thinking about them, but you can't go to them. They just accept, Mr. Whiskey Marcus, they're overseas, they're gone, they can't be with us, and they move on. And then we get out and we want to go back to how things were, and we can't, because they've moved on. They're used to life without us. And it's really heartbreaking, but even our military friends, out of sight, out of mind. And Marcus, I don't know how many friends you've made where once they got stationed somewhere else, it's like if you see them again, you're still brothers and sisters, but man, it's like they're just living their own life, right?
Exactly. And then at that point, you feel like a man or a woman on an island at that point, and you feel so misunderstood because all these years, or months, depending on how short or long your service time was, you've been detached from like civilian life, and that detachment from civilian life, it has created just two different worlds for you. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's that's the part that like you struggle to bridge back together,
Yeah.
you know,
And
and like, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, even within the military itself, you're isolated because you're part of this brotherhood,
Hmm.
sisterhood, whatever you want to call it. But it's clicky in a sense, like the nukes were kind of with the nukes, the topsiders were with the topsiders, and I don't know how it is in the army or the Marines or the Air Force, but
Oh
you've
yes,
got the
yes.
the rank too. Is in the civilian world, if you want to talk to your boss or your manager about something, it's so much less intimidating than like opening up to a chief or a master chief or a sergeant major. I don't know the army terms, but the rank separation, and at least that's the way I felt in the Navy. It's like, unless they were only one or two ranks above you, it was difficult to talk to them. And on some level it has to be, to have that respect. But that's what I loved about our captain was he saw us as people, as sailors. It didn't matter how high ranked he was. He and I were equals, and he and whoever, and he would come sit with us and have lunch with us in the galley, and he was so personable. And a lot of the military lacks that personableness because it's supposed to be no individuality. It's supposed to be we're on a mission, we're systematic. So yeah, and writing helped me through it. Um, but a lot of it, is it's locked up and it's still locked up. But I've had Vietnam veterans come on my show who said, you lock it up and it's just like anything else, it gets eroded over time. That box you put it in. And I've had guys who 40 years after what they went through starts coming out and it comes out worse. And so I'm still figuring out how to deal with it. But I rather take, you know, this journey where I had to figure out what to do with all this information than having never let them vent, you know? And like I said, the biggest part that surprised me is people you would never expect, best friends, colleagues, people you inspire to be like. And so, Marcus, did you ever lose anyone to suicide while you were serving or afterward or anything like that?
What's interesting is that we had attempts while we were deployed and while we were mobilizing, and then I can think back to like also uh, while we were even before like we got activated, and while we were still drilling and going through annual training because I was a guardsman, so you drill, you have your annual training, you go
Yeah,
back home, you chilling. Uh, so, but people would get into trouble. People. Well, you go get a speeding ticket when like
yeah,
you're gonna get arrested for going to the bar. So you don't really got it that hard as someone who's active duty. Uh, but uh, but like so my experience um is a little bit not it's not so different, but but once we did get activated, you know it it it, it became a little bit more. It did get very intense, and then when people got back home, it that's when like shit hit the fan for a lot of people. And as they was transitioning back, that's when we started seeing people drop like flies. So um it was a very, very huge shocker to hear of people that like you wouldn't even expect to take themselves out. These individuals that like you remember, being like the most jolliest ones,
yeah.
the most positive
With
ones,
families,
you know,
wives and
yeah, like
kids.
yeah, with wives and kids, like just taking themselves out. Uh, or the ones who like like was the playboys like before they
Yeah,
mobilize like dude you out of all people you used to have all the chicks around you and you was picking up Navy chicks when we was over there and like you take yourself out
man.
so yeah man and it was hard and then even myself I had attempts and then everybody was very surprised at me and it hurt a lot of people to hear that I had attempts that
Right,
nearly became fatal. So I had my very own struggles with my own attempts, and so I had a lot of interventions. Where I had um, NCO called me personally and
mm,
said, Marcus, we can't lose you. He called me by my first name, so
right.
so for him to call me by my first name, it was real.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that. And so I'm publishing a nonfiction book soon. So usually I write fiction, but I'm publishing my first nonfiction, and it's actually about identity and suicide. And the title is called "Who Would Miss Me?" Because that's the big question. Like, even civilian side, that's anyone who ever commits suicide or thinks about committing suicide. That's one of the biggest driving factors is who would miss me? I have no one. And we already discussed, Marcus, how isolating the military is. So it's an even bigger factor for, military members. Now, I listened to this podcaster, Di Manuel. He's actually coming on my show and I'm going on his show. And he had a guy come on. They were talking about some stats. And I found out this very shocking fact that broke my heart. The second leading cause of death in children between the ages of 10 and 14 is suicide. 10-year
Yeah.
olds, 11-year olds, 12-year olds. And of course, my instant thing was I blame social media. But even still, just think about that. Children are taking their own lives. And, I definitely had a rough childhood, but still, not until I was, in high school at least. To think that children are thinking about that stuff is so awful. But yeah, and I just emphasize that point that it's not just military. I want everyone to know that everything we're talking about is for everyone. No one
Yeah,
is safe from feeling bad, like I said. And like I said, that isolation, man. So, making sure each other are okay. Douglas Brinker came on my podcast, and he actually attempted suicide twice. They actually saved his life. He had used alcohol and drugs to get rid of himself in a bathroom in a bar, and they pumped him out and saved his life. And now he works as the person who answers the phone for suicidal veterans, and he's paying forward what they did to him. And so it's a really touching episode. And he was talking about, he shared a story of how this young man was going to commit suicide, and a veteran had just told him, he said, "Hey, young man," they just bumped into him at the bank. He said, "Young man, I appreciate what you're doing and you're cared for, and hope you have a great day." And the man stopped. The young man stopped. And so what I emphasize too is, you never know how small of an interaction, what small act of kindness, how far it goes. It really does have a snowball effect. And in a world, we are surrounded by negativity. Social media pumps out so much stuff on our feed. The news, every time I go to Planet Fitness and I look at the TV screens, it's nothing but bad news. And so, the good part about that is a light is best seen in the darkest place. And so just that small act of kindness. And Marcus, what really helped you through with your thoughts? I mean, just someone calling you by your first name, in the military, showing you that bit of, human to human interaction, right? Would you say that such a small act had such a big impact in your life?
just that personal that added personal touch to give that person some dignity. Some a lot of times people lose dignity, and they lose touch of their souls, and forget that, like, there's an inner person, inside of them. And and when you lose touch of that true inner person, you lose in touch of, like, all of those good memories, all of those good things about yourself, you know. And I want to go back to something you said earlier, about, like, just interacting with, like, all of the Vietnam veterans, man,
Right.
because they're history book, they're a walking history book,
They are.
you
They
know.
really are.
Uh, and I know that there's a lot of wisdom you can get from, like, talking to a lot of them. Is there anything, like, that stick out the most from, like, talking to them?
Yeah, to 20 years old, leading a whole platoon of soldiers through the jungle, losing people, making decisions on life and death, and what they went through, I just could never imagine. I have so much respect for them. But they came home and they weren't heroes, and he shared this with me, and I had heard a little bit about this, which was, they weren't welcome. America hated them. Compared to, World War II, veterans were heroes. People honored them. They had parades. But people were protesting in Vietnam War. And what he told me that really changed my perspective is, he said, if you see a Vietnam veteran, don't say thank you for your service. Say welcome home. He said, because we didn't get that. And he shared a story where he said it to another Vietnam veteran. He said, welcome home and thank you for what you did. And the guy just started crying because when he got home, he was booed. People hated
Uh,
him. After he had just spent 2 years going through the jungle, lost half of the people he was with. It was so. But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing from them was, you know, Raul Herrera. He wrote Capturing Skunk Alpha, and he came on the show and talked about that book. And the reason he wrote it 40 years later was because the voice of the man on the ship with him who was killed was haunting him. For 40 years, he refused to talk about Vietnam and what had happened. And he said when he wrote the book, it was silence, it was peace. And he felt like, part of what was bothering him was not sharing the story of what people went through. You know, acknowledging other service members and what they go through is so important. And I always appreciate it when I have people thank me and they say, I could never do what you did. And I say, I don't know how I did what I did because it really is awful. So on our ship, we had group therapy sessions, and I'm not really supposed to talk about what happens in those, but what I will share is, a guy broke down crying, and it was so touching. A full grown man, he was a hothead on the ship. He was always punching stuff, and he hated it there. He broke down crying, and he expressed this, which was so touching to me. He goes, we're in home port and we've lost so many people. He goes, this was supposed to be the time of our life. We were promised traveling and vacations. We're not actively deployed. This is home port. This is supposed to be our time where we're checking out Virginia Beach and hitting on girls and drinking and suntanning. And instead we've already lost sailors, left and right in home port. And that was so touching to me, that we're losing more people to our own selves and our emotions in our work environment. And one of the
Yeah.
scary things was my mentor who was training me during prototype when I was on the submarine. He said, Mr. Whiskey, do you understand why what happened with, and he was referring to the ship that I ended up getting stationed on. He's like, do you know why all the suicides on that ship are bad? And I was like, well, what other than the fact that human lives were lost, what are you referring to? He goes, the ship that you're going on didn't make changes or improve anything until after all those suicides. So this is the message they've sent now, that change will happen if people take their lives, and it's going to spread. And I've seen that in the military where people are like, you know what, we just need a couple of suicides to get this place spruced up. And that is such an awful mindset.
Wow.
That isn't martyrdom. That's just, it's awful. And that's part of the thing is I have people come on the show and we talk about toxic leadership and the work environment. And I'll share this. I love sharing this, because my boss said something that really showed, that really reflected some of the work environment. I went up to him and I said, hey, we're having this, it's called duty day in the Navy. It's a 24-hour working day and you have watches and stuff. You can't leave the ship. And I said, look, we're doing this every other day. We could do it like some of the other divisions on the ship every 6 days. We had the manning for it. Here's how we could hour everything. And he goes, Mr. Whiskey, y'all have it better than I did when I was doing what you did. So unless you have it worse, I'm not changing anything. And, that really blew my mind because here's where I'm at as a leader, Marcus. I want it to be better and better and better. And, whether I like the people who are replacing me or I'm training or not, if they can have it better, that's what I want to provide for them. Because a better work environment, happier sailors means more lives saved, less lives lost, and everything will get done. But this guy's mindset was, unless you guys have it worse than I had it, then I don't care. You guys are spoiled by my view. And that, what kind of leadership is that? That's not the leadership we need. And my best, it's awful because my favorite leaders, the mentors I had that were great, that I loved, all of them were low ranking because they lost their rank taking care of their sailors. When their sailors were overworked and they said, look, you've been pushing them too hard, I'm letting them go home. All right, you're going to captain's mast. That's how it works, unfortunately. And so the work environment and the leadership, I mean, that's the biggest thing. And they're always like, well, Mr. Whiskey, you should stay in for life and become the change you want to see. And what's ridiculous about that, as much as I'd love to do that, is I shouldn't have to devote my life to making this minimal change just because no one else wants to do it. They always say one team, one fight, but only when it affects you in a bad way. The whole class is going to get in trouble because one guy did this. But how about the whole command or something that affects your leader? Then it's not one team, one fight. So Marcus, how would you say when you served the leadership was? And did you see improvements throughout time or did things get worse?
Not during my time. You know, I didn't see it. I didn't see it in my era. I gotta be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
It did. especially when we were deployed, it was a lot of toxic leadership and a lot of similarities and a lot of parallels. Um, you got to remember, like it was '06, '07. So, so when I
Yeah.
deployed, so Bush was still in office, Cheney was still Cheney was really running things. So,
Right.
and but all jokes aside, though, what I remember most, in a lot of times, in me being that close uh, to those who's, I guess, getting the most from the top, uh, they were burned out. NCOs were burned out. Um, company commanders were burned out. You know,
Yeah.
just as much as we were burned out. You know, a lot of those, a lot of those top, a lot of those above us were burned out. So, so they took their frustrations out on us. And just as much as they needed a break. You know, like they it's like they slave drived us, and 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 instead of them saying, okay, well, I don't like the fact that our brigadier general is doing this to us. I don't like the fact that there's so much red tape going on. You know, uh, there's things being, you know, flowing down. Like, let's find a way to, I guess not. I guess their hands was tied.
Yeah.
In a sense, were tied in a way, but there's still a way to communicate that without rebelling against the system.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree for sure.
You know, and but they made it so much more tougher on us by being very aggressive. Um, there was a lot of abuse, physical, literal physical abuse. There were periods of physical abuse.
Right.
There were, you know, the long work hours.
Yeah.
Um, and the reason I know it was long work hours was because guys was getting injured.
Yeah. Pushing you guys past
I
your
got,
limits.
I got injured, from sleep deprivation. Time, you get a guy, lodging I'm carrying I'm rolling a Humvee tire, you know, um, from lack of sleep, rolling it up a plank a plank I made. This is dumb. I'm rolling up a plank to the top shelf, and then it rolls back off the shelf, and I try to catch it because I'm so sleepy,
Right.
and it nearly decapitates my head. Like causing a concussion and nearly like nerve damage.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And,
I mean, that was the culture, man.
yeah. And the ironic part about it, I don't know. The Army and Marines have much. Their higher ups are in much better shape, but in the Navy, it's kind of like the higher your rank, the bigger your stomach, and the reason is you have more money for food, and you get the once you get to a certain rank, the desserts are unlimited in the galley. So but yeah, and it's funny because they'll be the guys, training us and quote beating us, and they're driving alongside in a golf cart with a reconstructed ankle and a 300-pound gut, and we called it the Chiefs button. Their bottom button could never be a button, so every chief had like their bottom button kind of open, and we'll be like, your Chiefs button is showing. So
I saw that a lot.
yeah, yeah, it's pretty funny, and
I wondered that.
yeah, we
I
call it
wonder
the
what was
Chiefs
going
button.
on with that.
Yeah, it was just like unless not officers. Officers are in shape, but like chief,
Uh,
senior chief, master chief, it was like we call them the big boys. And it was actually
yeah,
funny because we had this thing called the fitness enhancement program for any sailors who
yeah.
didn't meet the physical fitness requirements or their measurements were not good. And we called it it's called the physical or the fitness enhancement program, but we sailors enlisted, we called it the fat enlisted persons. So because typically people who didn't meet the standards were heavy, and we actually had an officer tell us like, hey, that's not hazing. It's a requirement to be in the military. You can make fun of the fat kids all you want. So we're like, yes, sir. Thank you. And one day I'm passing with my buddy, what do we call him? The Sandman. Yeah. So he used to co-host the show with me, the Sandman. He wanted to get Dairy Queen. So I was like, I'll take you, man. And we see the Feppers, which you're not supposed to call them that, but the Feppers are training with all the big body chiefs. This is their fitness enhancement program. They were playing dodgeball. The Chiefs against all the fat kids. So you have a bunch of Chiefs and all these fat kids playing dodgeball. I'm like, man, what kind of military training is this? And I remember I told my dad about it. He goes, well, they must have told the enlisted sailors like, hey, last one standing gets a free ticket to the buffet. So but that was by far one of the best sights I saw. Is there's a bunch of Chiefs, throwing these balls anime style at these fat kids, and they're just knocking them down. I mean, that classic like military movie kind of cliche thing. And yeah, you got to remind me. I lost my train of thought, but it was something about the higher ups in training. But it's ridiculous. The military is always, except for the Marines, which is why I respect the Marines. The branches keep lowering their physical fitness standards. And I talked about this the other day when I first joined. It was like you got to do a 3-minute plank, then 2:30. Now it's a minute. Women have to
Mhm.
do 10 push-ups, maybe 17 push-ups max. When I started, you had to do 50 push-ups. Now it's like 30 something. They keep lowering their standards. In fact, on my most recent episode of Davy Jones' Locker, me and Ms. Whitney discussed how you no longer need an education to get into the Navy. You no longer need a high school diploma or a GED as long as you get a certain score in the ASVAB, about a 50 or 55, which I said, unless you have a waiver, then you could get a 35 in a waiver because the military, you can waive a lot of things, or a lot of things you just leave out. Um, yeah, they're just letting anyone in nowadays because they can't get anyone. They were at Anime Con trying to recruit the anime guys and be like, you want to be a real life anime hero? You want to find the One Piece? Join the Navy. You can find the real One Piece. So it's crazy. Don't worry, Marcus, though. The Air Force has stepped up their game. You now have to deadlift 40 pounds in order to qualify for the Air Force. So hopefully,
40 pounds.
yeah. So Marcus,
Oh, wow.
have you ever deadlifted before?
Yeah, I've deadlifted before.
Have you ever been able to at least pull up the bar?
Yeah, I got the
Yeah,
ball.
you just qualified for the United States Air Force, man.
Oh, man, what a joke.
Yeah, and so we've talked about a
Oh,
lot of
man.
serious stuff on here. So if you want, I was
Yeah,
gonna get into a couple of comical stories, try to lighten the mood a little bit, if that's all right with you.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that's fine, man. This, podcast is open for it. And, yeah, but it's just scary though. How military is like,
Used to be American
kind of,
heroes, now it's
yeah, it used to be
bums.
a American serial, and now like I don't know what it is now. Um,
Yeah,
I don't, and people were talking about like how unprepared we are now. We
we
definitely are
really
unprepared
are.
for.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and we've argued about it on the show because they're like, you can't have a beard, and it's like the enemy doesn't care what I look like, man. I don't care. And Homewrecker put it best. I don't know if I can swear on the show, but he's like, we look like a bunch of pussies. A bunch of baby faced pussies is what the military looks like. Let us have our beards. I said, terrorists don't care what we look like, man. We're what we look like is an American in a uniform. They don't care about a beard. Um, so yeah, I'm hoping that they'll get rid of that. But there's so much military. They focus on so much BS that like, oh, I can't have hand tattoos for half the branches. Like, who cares? Look, if I'm an American person and I'm trying to fight for my country, like I don't care what tattoos you have, like welcome aboard. And yeah, the retention crisis, the recruiting crisis, and we covered that on my show. It's at an all-time low. Luckily the movie Top Gun actually, got us a couple. There was a spike in recruitment, but it's interesting. I was reading articles and the military wants to be like, well, because of COVID, you couldn't have face-to-face interactions with your recruiter. Buddy, that's not why recruiting is low. Retention is low. They were talking about raising the nuke bonus to reenlist for just 2 years, Marcus, to 180K. When I joined, there wasn't a bonus if you were like most rates. Now I was in the galley during the end of my 3rd year, and I heard these guys talking. Second week on the ship, they were like boatswain's mates. So the most basic rate in the Navy, 25K bonus, because no one wants to join. It's insane. There used to be no bonuses. The fact that they have to make these incentives, but then you got to think too, 180K. Well, obviously they're offering it for a reason, right? And still, you know, so in the nuclear program, Marcus, you can do what's called a star reenlistment. You get 2 more years, typically shore duty guaranteed, and you rank up and you get a bonus of about 80K. And my ship was full of people wearing a paperclip on their left breast pocket, and it stood for "People against people ever reenlisting. Civilian life is preferred." That's what paperclip stood for. And we had more people wearing paperclips than not. We had more people getting out than staying in. In fact, the weed crisis got huge because a lot of sailors are rebelling because they're like, look, if it's legal, it should be like alcohol. We do it in our free time. We don't do it at work. It's all good. And I have mixed feelings about that. But people were smoking it and reporting on themselves and getting an honorable discharge and leaving within like a month or two. It got so bad that, or people were just smoking and they didn't care if they got kicked out, because you would get kicked out, general discharge, and then you could upgrade after half a year to honorable. It got so bad that I heard rumors they were changing the rule from the no drug tolerance policy to now the captain decides what happens to you, because they can't afford to keep losing people. Every time I saw the restricted sailors, the sailors who were going to get kicked out or were punished, all weed smokers, almost every single one of them. People don't want to stay in, and the military isn't really helping much. You know, they take all these surveys, and you got to actually look at those, big Navy and big Army. You got to look at those surveys we're filling out, you know, because at least me personally, I put, look, here's X, Y, Z, ABC, and that's all you got to do to make the military better, right? And I don't know if they had that when you were in, and I know it's nowadays everywhere you go, command climate survey, all of this and that. And Marcus, I'm sure you would agree with this. I said, look, military, this is what you got to do. You sit down with me. You say, all right, how do you want your life to unfold? All right, you want to go to here, you want to be there for this many years or whatever, right? Because there's a lot of guys who they want to have a family and they're like, well, we're going to deploy you or we're going to station you for shore duty, but in England. I said, look, I want to stay stateside. I'll give you 20 years, but I want to do this job and for this long, and so I can have a family or whatever it may be. Or I'm a single guy and I want to be a party animal for years. You know, there's so many sailors who want to go submarine or travel overseas, and they spent their whole contract in Virginia. So, I mean, Marcus, what are your thoughts on that? And what options do you offer the military to improve retention and recruiting?
Yeah, it was like so, that was one of the big ones that that I always talked about. You know, like
The
about
dream
the
sheet.
yeah.
They call it the
Yeah,
dream
so
sheet.
yeah, the dream sheet. Yeah, the one that like they
The
just
nightmare sheet.
usually just like yeah, they just keep handing it over, fouling it. You know, like they either foul it or like they shred it.
Yeah.
I
Or
don't know
say
what they do with
they
it.
say, you know what would be funny? Let's do
Hmm.
exactly what this guy doesn't want. That would be pretty funny. They
Right.
they're sitting back there drinking it like, let's ruin this guy's life.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, yeah. But the you know, there's usually there's usually like you know that that option of you know how can you improve you know being able to like keep families together, you know, like how can you improve like you know uh when you want like travel pay, you know, like travel pay should be way you know way better, you know, like
Yeah.
you should be compensated better for travel pay.
Yeah, for
You
holiday
should
and
have like
overtime.
yeah, you
Night
know,
shift.
holiday and overtime should be way better, you know, like when uh you know in like you're talking for Navy guys, like you know like when you know like when it comes time to like start a family, because like these guys get in very young, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
like I got in when I was 17,
Yeah.
you know,
Everyone I
so
know is like 17, 18, you know.
you know so like you're not thinking that far ahead, So like like I spent 6 years of my life. I gave you 6 years of my life. So like 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 I should have some type of like family planning counselor that like checks in with me and
Yeah,
and like and track that's one thing that I did put down. It's like I should have
mentorship.
some type of professional counselor that works with me, especially being a guardsman, you know because I get to come back home. So like 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 I don't want to be working at UPS.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so
I
that
get
was
that.
that was very important to me, and then transitioning out, like what happens when like what happens when I get my contract, So and nobody knew that, nobody knows what happens. Nobody knows what happens. Nobody knows what happens when if they get injured, you know.
Yeah,
So they don't tell you. They don't tell you.
and,
They don't
and
tell
and
you if
you're
you get
looked down
what
on for
happens when
getting
you get
injured.
right. Exactly. So like there's no injury pay, there's nothing. Like I mean if you're injured and you're able to return back, there's no like no bridge with the bridge between that, so like
Yeah,
you if you want to get go to sick call, like like all of this crazy stuff.
yeah, and honestly, Marcus, just in general, a higher compensation. Because most sailors that I experienced, personally, were living paycheck to paycheck, and it wasn't because of bad
Sure.
spending decisions. There's a lot of those. Don't get me wrong, I got plenty of stories,
Mhm.
but just in general, the pay is so low for people who are putting everything on the line, and then you've got everyone in the entertainment industry making thousands or millions more than us, and
Yeah.
first responders, nurses, teachers, and military are getting jack garbage, and it infuriates me. I see billions of dollars being sent to other countries. I said, well, what about our military? What about our men and women out there?
Yeah, enlisted get are so underpaid. Enlisted soldiers and sailors are like they so underpaid, man. It's ridiculous. Like what 30,000, 20 to 30,000.
Sometimes less, and they want to say medical and dental. And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, medical is closed after your working hours. It's closed on the
Mhm.
weekends, and they're only available to see you for half an hour in the morning before work when there's a line of 20 people, and then they're going to say, come back in 2 weeks, you're fine. I've had
Yeah,
I've had very little good experiences with medical, and my buddies have had even worse, especially if it's physical. Because of my ship situation with all the suicides, mental health was pretty good. It was booked out always, but they would see you. But physical, they'd be like, you're fine, you're fine. Brush it off, and we're not going to write this down because we don't want you to get disability when you get out.
no, they don't. They'll fight you. They'll fight you for it. They're definitely gonna
Yeah,
fight you for it. And again, like it's definitely minimum wage. So
or eight,
they're
eight
not
cents
paying
an
you for the
hour or
stress.
something like that. Yeah, it's like a couple
Yeah,
cents an hour when you do the math.
yeah, and hazard pay. When you are deployed, the hazard pay is hazard pay is
Yeah. Yeah, more hazard than pay. It's less pay, more hazard. It's crazy, Marcus, because when I got out, and I was working at this chemical plant doing rotating shift work. There was this thing called extra pay for night shift. There was
yeah,
overtime. There was holiday pay. I was like, so hold on, this is everything I've been doing, but now I'm making what I made in a month in a week or 2 weeks. It's insane. And yeah, and then you've got these bonuses, but it's like, look. I should this bonus is because I'm giving you 2 more years of my life or 5 more, sometimes 6 more, And like I said, just look, if I wanna go somewhere, and that's all you gotta do. I mean, if they had said, "Hey, do you wanna do this, XYZ, Mr. Whiskey?" I would said, "Yeah. In fact, I'll do it for 30 years." I said, "That's exactly what I want." And like you said, we're not counseled, there's no mentorship. I know on my when I got to my ship, they were like, "Find a mentor," and it was kind of like this and that, but oftentimes it's a mentor who is just someone who works with you, and they're too busy doing their own thing. They need a separate program just for mentoring or family counseling, like you said. And I think that is so important because something I did want to mention earlier was how young we are. Most everyone I knew in the
mhm,
military was 17, 18, 19, 20, at the oldest 20. the military is all they've ever known, or they went to college after high school and now they're in the military. They've never been an adult, you know. And I remember when I got out, Marcus, they tried having me do this financial plan, but it was basically brushed aside. It was a guy saying, "Hey, are you going to be financially stable?" And of course, I didn't want to do all paperwork and counseling, so I was like, "Yeah, yeah." But if someone was actually assigned to sit down with me and go over everything, that would have been nice. Or in the beginning, when you first, even at boot camp or after boot camp or at some point, like you said, that would be very, very helpful. But yeah.
Right.
Also, Marcus, it's your show, and I don't know how long you go, so and I could talk forever. So that's what I do for a living. So that's why I just want to check in with you real quick
Oh
because
yeah,
my show
man.
is,
Hey,
I've had 3-star reviews because my episodes are too long, and I'm like, okay, well, listen to someone else's show. Like I do an hour and a half to 2 hours, sometimes an hour. I said sometimes 45 minutes. If I don't like you, maybe 20 minutes, and I debate whether I'm going to publish the episode or not. But yeah, so
hey,
I've had some.
if I Hey, I'm
Go
with
ahead.
you on that, and sorry to cut you off. Like, I'm with you on that. Like, I cut it right off at like that's why you see my slots, my time slots at 30 minutes because like if I don't like you, I cut you off at 30 minutes.
Well, my thing is the only time I've ever not liked someone is they were a military guy. They're like, "Yeah, I'll talk about all this stuff," and then all they did was promote their
Mhm.
business for 20 minutes, and they're like, "All right, good episode, bye." I was like, "Look,
Yep,
man, I love promoting people, especially when it's services that are gonna help my listeners. But man, you gotta give me a little something back, a little comedy, a little life
exactly,
advice, something. You're not
exactly.
just gonna do a plug in, man.
Yeah,
I'm a
I don't
person
like
too. I
people
have
who do that.
feelings. I have too
Yeah,
many
yeah, I don't.
feelings. You can ask
Yeah,
any
I
woman
don't
I've
like
dated. I
people
have
that
too many
plug.
feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, when people come on like plug and stuff, like, like they only getting 30 minutes of my time and and of my audience time, like you're not about to get past
Yeah.
'cause like 30 minutes is being nice. 30 minutes is being nice and I don't like being labeled as nice. You don't want to be labeled as nice, because if you're being nice, that means you're not genuine. You want to be kind, you want to be kind, and but if I'm being forced to be
Handsome.
nice, that means I'm not being genuine. That means I genuinely don't like you, because I don't like what you just did. But I
Yeah.
like you, Mr. Whiskey, and like,
I
that's
appreciate
why,
that.
that's why I don't mind sharing my time and sharing my audience time with you. And like, and then like, we got time, so like that's why like I want to give you time to like talk about whatever you want to talk about like
Yeah.
in these next couple of minutes like we got up to about like uh another 7 minutes 7 8 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'll just share a funny story about the Navy in general, and then I'll kind of talk about what I do nowadays. But just because this is kind of funny, so are you on social media a lot, Marcus? Like TikTok or Instagram or anything? Or
Yeah, man, I'm on all platforms.
oh, okay, okay. Now I don't know how familiar with TikTok tends to do these. They have trends and challenges. Have you ever heard of like the cinnamon challenge? Was a couple years ago, or like the Sprite challenge or anything like that?
I think I remember the Sprite challenge. I'm going to look it up real quick just so I can
Uh,
refresh myself.
so yeah, Miss Whitney did it on. She didn't do it on my show, but she's on my show. She chugged like a whole bottle of Sprite, and she could never have it again. It made her sick. But like the cinnamon challenge was, you would get like a spoonful of cinnamon and try to swallow it, and it was, I think it was like choking people. It was like hazardous. There was another
Okay, trying
one.
to so basically trying to drink the whole bottle without burping.
Yeah, yeah, stupid stuff like that. TikTok, but
Okay.
sometimes they're dangerous. Like the Tide Pod challenge. Remember people were trying to eat Tide Pods?
Yeah. Oh my God, that was silly.
No, I loved it though because it happened when I went to boot camp. So we would throw Tide Pods at each other, be like, "Have your recruit candy. Here's some recruit candy, man." And we throw the Tide Pods at each other. I haven't eaten any Tide Pods. I just want to make that clear. But yeah, and there was the cinnamon challenge, which was like pure cinnamon powder, just and it was choking people, and especially people with asthma were having attacks. There was another one. It was like I believe 5 saltine crackers. You had to eat them in a row without any water, and apparently it's physically impossible. Apparently, exactly 5 saltine crackers will just dehydrate you. The guy telling me about this saltine cracker challenge used to be master at arms and in charge of all the barracks in Chicago. And Chicago is where boot camp is. It's also where most of
Yeah.
the basic rates, the the smaller ASVAB scoring people are stationed, as I'll put it nicely, and they all hang out there. And I've heard some stories about that base, so they can come after me. I mean, Nuke School is its own breed of weird stuff on base, but he was in charge of inspecting the rooms. And I love room inspection stories because Nuke School has a whole PowerPoint dedicated to the stuff you're not allowed to have that they have found. Batarangs, knives, swords. They have size limits on dildos and sex toys because of some of the stuff they found. They've got size limits, quality limits. They've got limits on stuff. So, one of the funniest signs, I walked into a barracks building in Nuke School and it says, "Please stop flushing anime figurines down the toilet and sinks. It's for water only." And I'm like, man, one a roommate of a buddy of mine had the Mia Lamia. She's a snake girl from anime. He had her body pillow. It's 28 feet long and it's $300-$400. So weird stuff like that.
Okay.
Never though does anything match what happened at the Chicago base. This guy was telling me about. He was at 19 years and like 6 months, and he got put on restriction. And he only had like 4 months to go before he got out, and a woman had sappered him. He said it was his 4th time, and this was a man with wife and kids. He goes, never knew the chick, it just happened, and they took away his shore command. But anyway, he used to inspect the rooms, and you would find skeletons wearing the uniform with a dildo on his head or stuff like that. He found, and 2 people died from this challenge. I want you, ladies and gentlemen, do not try this at home. 2 people died from this, and it's embarrassing if you die from this. It's very embarrassing. They were taking Tupperware containers, and they were crapping in it, and they were putting a balloon over it, entirely enclosing it, and they would let all that air rise and ferment for a couple days, and then they would inhale it, and 2 of them got killed from it. He said they had 2 fatalities on base from this, but they were huffing their
Oh my
own
God.
fecal fumes that had fermented into a balloon for days. Yeah, thank you. Your reaction is exactly what I expected. When I heard this story, I was like, what the hell is this? I mean, that's insane. And it was some kind of trend on social media. People were like, well, we found it on social media. And all I could think is, all right, I'm the captain of the base. I got to call their parents, the people who died, and I got to be like, ma'am/sir, your son and daughter has passed away due to a toxic gas exposure, toxic fume. I was like, how are you going to word it? Are you going to tell them exactly what happened? And now I'm thinking as the parents, all right, how are we writing the obituary? How are we giving the funeral speech? And I'm comical about it because that is natural selection at its finest. That is stupidity at its finest. Like
Oh
death
my
in
God.
human life is very valuable to me. But when you do stupid stuff like that, I can't. The sympathy and empathy is only so limited. It's like,
Yeah,
Marcus, what's your reaction to that? I mean, could you imagine?
you kind of like, you kind of like getting rid of your own the sympathy, at that point. You kind
Yeah,
of like saying like, hey, I don't need any sympathy.
but
Don't
I
don't
saw it
cry at my
online,
funeral.
Marcus. I saw it online,
Like
man. I
there
saw it
was there
online.
was a song. There was a song. I think there's a gospel song. Don't cry for me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
but
oh man, that's disgusting. Like I have heard some disgusting things, but
oh yeah.
that's my disgusting thing for the day.
Yeah, so everyone, ladies and gentlemen, that's your weekly dose of stupidity, and hopefully it made you feel better about yourself. Wherever you are in life right now, you're like, at least I'm not at that level of huffing my own fecal matter in a balloon, and don't get to that point. Please use a toilet, or if you're gonna be desperate, like maybe a cat's litter box or a planted pot in the home. Just not the Tupperware container, not grandma's Tupperware container that she sent cookies home with you. So don't. But yeah, Marcus, I figured I've got plenty of stories, but I figured I'll share that one with you, and now you
That's
can share it with everyone else as well, and
yeah.
it's a good conversation starter. It's a good party starter. Like, hey, have y'all ever tried the fecal balloon challenge? It definitely get you. People will remember you.
Yeah, that's a good question to ask people, because
Yeah.
then then you know if people full of it.
Yeah, and then you could always just carry some Tide Pods and Sprite on you. You gotta have the whole collection. You gotta, like, Batman's tool belt. I'm gonna get that, but I'm gonna have Tide Pods, Sprite bottles, a spoon, a jar of cinnamon powder, and then balloons and Tupperwares. And
Well,
people are gonna be very confused what I do for a living. I am a comedian, so it all seems like it might be part of the act. But I'm just in case anyone challenges me via social media to, Mr. Whiskey, can you inhale cinnamon? I can inhale more than cinnamon. I can inhale my own fecal matter through balloon fumes. So I've never done that. I just want to make that clear. I know I made it sound like I am very skilled at that, and I am not. This is Marcus's show, so I mean, maybe you're the host, so I want to give that power to you that you've done it, and that you are more skilled at it than me.
hey, no, I didn't have my, my fair share of risk taking, in my life, and I'm a family man now, and like I prefer to just like, be
Okay,
born in my van, in my minivan.
okay,
So
but 10 years ago, you would have had a party, huh?
yeah, I probably would have had a party, man. I probably would have, you know, been a, one of those guys in a tango outfit, the toga outfit, so yeah, yeah, with
Yes,
some
sir.
tissue around my head, making tissue zombies. So I
Yes,
don't know.
sir. Yes, sir.
So
But yeah,
so
so
like
just I was gonna say just what I want to leave everyone with on a serious note is looking out for each other, taking care of each other, asking those questions, those difficult conversations. And one thing I want to mention too is the reason I talked about the car ride is especially for grown men who struggle to talk about these things, the car ride and children. If you're having trouble reaching out to your kids and connecting with them, Marcus, and everyone, a car ride sets up this intimate space, but you're not making eye contact. You're able to talk to each other and feel distant but connected. And so I highly encourage y'all, if you're having trouble breaking through with someone, invite them out for a drive, maybe somewhere country scenic, sometimes at night, and set up that space. Sometimes people need that space. But yeah, look out for each other. If you're in the military, when they say make sure you call your mom, for real, stay connected with your family. They are gonna move on and get used to living life without you, but they don't have to get rid of you completely. You still have an important part in their life. They're letting you do your thing, you're letting them do their thing, and make sure you stay connected with friends. Be able to talk to your higher ups about how you're feeling. It's their job to take care of their soldiers and sailors, and civilian side, same thing. And like we talked, Marcus, about the statistics for children suicide, be talking to your kids as well. Everyone who's a parent or an uncle or an aunt or grandparent, kids are going, especially because of social media, they're going through a lot of emotions. I think faster and sooner and more complex than we were. So make sure you're taking care of them. Again, as Marcus mentioned, I'm the founder of Couple of Nukes podcast, so I do have a platform where I talk about all this stuff. And hopefully, in the description below for this, you could find that my website, and it has a catalog of every episode broken into what kind of conversations you want to have. So whether you want to listen to all the Army stuff, the Marine stuff, life and dating, and yeah, and you can always email me, coupleofnukes@gmail.com, to be on the show, or if you want me to talk about a certain subject or share a story. And you can also find me on the Owl app, where you can call me at any time to talk about any of this stuff. But Marcus, I want to thank you so much for all this time you've given me. I feel a little honored compared to some of your other guests. But yeah, I want to thank you, man, for having this platform as well, where you also help people. And so thank you, one, for your service, and two, for what you do now. And thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
hey, thank you, Mr. Whiskey, man. You like that's why I love talking to podcasters. They know how to do the call to action properly.
I appreciate that, man.
You made this so easy for me today, man, and it's always good to just lay back and get some
Yeah,
good conversation in, and and get some good content. So from a good friend, man. So
appreciate that.
we're gonna stay connected for a long time, and um, so like real good to have you. So. And yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, Transformers out there, you got the call to action. So make sure you check out a couple of news. Yeah, and like you said, I got all the info in the episode description, and it's clearly spelled out. I have nothing else to say.
I think we
He did
covered
it.
it
He
all,
did it
man.
all. So
Booyah.
until next time, many blessings, peace, and lots of love. I'm Marcus.
And I'm Mr. Whiskey.